I'm Vanessa Canby, and I'm going to sit down with Leslie Abrokwaa, and he has a fascinating story. He went from being in prison to going to Cambridge University, and I don't think many people can say that. He now lives in Ghana with his wife and 2 children, and we're going to get into moving from the UK to Ghana, his life growing up in London, and, how things are just now. So hi, Leslie.
Hi, Vanessa. How you
It's
doing?
been so many years that I've wanted to sit down with you.
For sure.
And finally, we're here.
Indeed.
So I want to go through your sort of life journey. When I first heard that you went from being in prison to going to Cambridge University, I was just like, wow, how did that happen?
Sure.
I don't think many people can say that they've done that.
For sure.
So what happened? Like, what landed you in prison in the first place?
Yeah, I guess the whole fact of not having the right role models in my life and being susceptible to the environment in which I was living in, being raised by a single parent mum who was working back-to-back 3 jobs in order to keep the lights on, not having that, I guess, that father figure to keep me grounded and just, I guess, a positive role model to look up to and say, oh, do you know what? I want to aspire to be like this person one day. I guess the void in which was in my life at the time and the shelves that were empty were placed with all these different various things. So it'd be the likes of looking at older cousins who were selling drugs or in the latest clothes and cars and seeing how they got the materialistic things they got that was appealing to me at the time. I then veered towards that way. So at the age of 15, I was selling. And obviously my parents don't know, but it's something that I was able to conceal from them because it got to a stage where I didn't want to have to ask my mum for money. So I said to myself, if I'm able to do this, I won't have to ask her for money because I know she struggles for money and I don't want to do that because there are things I need, there are things I want. And I think that's the story for many young people in our current day. And it's this essence of the pressure of having to trying to fit in, but not having the means to do so. So then they so easily become susceptible to these different ideas, such as selling drugs or such as joining a gang, such as doing all these other things that may get them quick cash. And as we know, that doesn't have longevity. When we think about that way of living, I mean, it's you either end up dead or you end up in prison, or it's just, live a life watching over your shoulder 24/7. And I guess when I began to get into selling drugs, I didn't even think that was a probability. And as I got into it a bit deeper and deeper and deeper, I began to realize, okay, there are consequences here. I guess it was so glamorized to me that all I saw was the pounds. It's like, okay, cool, I can make a lot of money from this. And I was making a lot of money from it. At the beginning, I wasn't, but it was getting me by, and it was getting me the things in which I wanted, trainers and tracksuits and,
And did it feel worth it at the time?
It induced a lot of paranoia.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because I remember I had this stuff on me, right? And it was smelling, and I walked onto a bus and everybody was staring at me.
Oh my God.
Everybody was staring at me and I could just feel like I was being judged. And deep down, it's like, I ain't been raised that way, but I was willing to do whatever I needed to do in order to make a bit of money to, I guess, keep up with appearances, so to speak. Yeah.
So did your parents move from Ghana to the UK?
Yeah, they did.
So I guess, looking at from that side, they moved there probably to give their children, a better life. And obviously you ended up in a place where your mum was like so hard worked that you felt like you had to provide for yourself, basically.
Yeah.
So I feel like that is like a cycle that seems to happen like so much, and it is so sad that it ends up that way, when like parents feel like they're doing the best thing, but actually if you'd been raised in Ghana, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Do you know what? The funny thing is, I was born in the UK, but at the age of 2, I came to Ghana.
Oh, right.
And I lived in Ghana till the age of 7.
Wow.
At the age of 4, I used to sell ice cream in Ghana.
Oh my my goodness.
literally. And by the age of 5, I was an ice cream connoisseur. Like I knew every ice cream there was. My aunt used to say to me, for every ice cream you sell, you can eat one. So yeah, that was sort of how the journey went. But in regards to growing up in London, I realized there was a vast difference. The binary opposites were crazy because on one hand, I've been taught to respect my elders and to, have all these different sort of ways in dealing with older people and respecting people. And then on the other hand, when I began school in the UK, I was just like, whoa, these children are like so badly behaved. They don't respect and X, Y, and Z. I remember vividly, I was 7 years old. I'd just gotten to the UK and I think it was approaching Christmas time. And I think I was in year 3 or year 4. And there was this teacher who was putting up Christmas decorations. And she was climbing this ladder, tons of children sitting down, waiting for her to come down the ladder. She slipped and she fell on her back. All the students were laughing.
Oh, no.
All the students were laughing. And I was just like, hold on, what's funny? Like, she's hurt herself. So I was the only one that decided to get up and to try and help her up. And then I went to call for assistance. Cut the long story short, they made an example of me. But for me, that was just the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And obviously I was the same age as them, but it's like there was a level of maturity that I had so young because I'd been exposed to all these different things. Having to go out and grind and sell ice cream to make money for my aunt who was looking after me at the time because my mum didn't have enough money to keep me and maintain a household. So she's like, look, let me send them back to Africa. Let me build up myself. And then when I'm at a decent space and place, I'll bring him back. Mm-hmm. So that was essentially the narrative.
Wow.
So it wasn't linear, and I guess life isn't, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess me going into prison was definitely part of my journey in which was going to shape me for the greater good. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I didn't see it like that.
And how was it being in prison? Like, I mean, for someone like me, I actually studied criminal justice at university. So, I've studied sort of like prison,
For sure.
Never been into prison, have no idea what it would actually feel like to be locked up. So what was it like?
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when I was outside of the prison, just looking at the prison, I was scared. I was like, whoa, like, is this what I'm going to be encountering? I've heard all this stuff about it. And then I remember going in. As soon as I went into prison, where they had me in cuffs and then they uncuffed me, and then there's different boxed, transparent box rooms, and it's like a holding space before they send you to the next place where they search you, strip search you, and then clothe you differently, and then apprehend you into the particular wing in which you're going to be residing in. But as soon as I got in there, I remember vividly Crime Watch was on. And
on the TV?
On the TV, yeah. So they've got like, in these transparent box rooms, so everyone can see everyone. So it's like, someone might have a problem with the person in the next box room, but they won't see each other. And usually the governors know, so they'll keep them apart.
Okay.
But in places like sort of church or gym, you cross paths where people can sort of get into scuffles. So as soon as I go into this box room, I see someone I went to school with. And he was just like, what are you in here for, etc., etc. And he just automatically, he doesn't even know it. He made me feel so calm. He's like, I've been in here about 4 or 5 times. It's cool, man. It's proper cool, man. And just him saying that alone just calmed me down. Because I'm sure for anyone that hasn't ever gone to prison or hadn't ever gone to prison, I'm sure anxiety and fear would have been something that would have definitely encompassed them. And just hearing his words calmed me down. But then I realized as soon as I got into my cell, I was like, hold on, where am I? This has to be a dream. This can't be real.
Seriously?
I promise you. Because it was like night and day. Like it all happened so quickly. And I was just like, how did I go from that to this in such a short space of time? And it was just, I guess, a culmination of bad choices that built up to me ending up in that place. And it can so easily happen. I'm sure you've heard of people that have been on a straight and narrow. One instance happens where maybe their brother or cousin gets jumped, they get involved, either get killed or end up doing the killing. And it's something that can so easily happen simply because of the environment, the environment in which you reside in. And living where I was living, there were other people that were in and out of prison. So yeah, I remember touching the ceiling and saying like, this can't be real. And hearing, you know, people shouting from London to London, people in which I knew as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, people that I heard were in prison, and then I actually went to see them in prison as well. So yeah, I guess for my family it was shameful. For my mum especially, it was shameful. It was something that she, yeah, I guess kept to herself. She didn't share with any of her, you know, extended family members.
And how long were you there?
So I was looking at 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I was looking at 10 years. I was arrested with 2 firearms and was convicted of robbery as well. And the case was up in the air. There was a whole lot of back and forth, adjourning. I wasn't able to get bail. So all in all, I was sentenced to 3.5 years.
All right. Okay.
And because of guilty plea and because of remand time taken, because it was my first time in prison, I ended up serving a year.
Oh,
And the rest was
so-
done on suspended sentence.
Okay.
But the funny thing is, the funny thing is, around that time, whilst I was in prison, I decided to get closer to God. I decided to read my Bible more. I decided to go to church whilst being in prison. And I remember when my mum came to visit me, she was like, she comes to visit me and we're sat down like this and she's sitting across me. And I was like, hi, mum. I was like, it's good to see you, mum.
She didn't say anything.
I missed you, mum. The first words in which she said absolutely broke me. I felt like I'd failed at life. And she said to me, I didn't ever think I'd have to come to a place like this to ever come and see you. And I was just
Oh,
like,
that's so sad.
and it just broke me. And I just like, damn, I failed. Because when I was out there doing all those things, I guess I didn't have that.
Like her perspective.
I didn't have that perspective in mind of like, okay, these are the people that will be impacted if I end up on the other end of these, you know, on the consequences of what I'm doing. And I guess that was selfish of me, but I was young. I was naive. And I guess you got to go through some things to learn some things, to grow from those things. And I wouldn't change my story. I think it's perfect because I've been able to see things from a different lens. And I realized that there's many other young people that are also faced with difficult decisions and that are faced with peer pressure and that are faced with a lack in which they are trying to fill in their own ways. And at times it's not always the best. And this is why we need each other.
And so what do you think about people in your position, you know, that you used to be in London? Like, do you feel like London, what's your thoughts basically on growing up in London for people like you?
Yeah. In what sense?
Like, do you think it's kind of like pre-written, like this is just going to keep happening over and over again? Like, what do you think needs to happen to kind of stop this cycle?
It's a good question. It's a very big question because I think many things need to take place in favor of the colored in the Western world, right? But I think if we don't take responsibility of our narrative in the West, things are never going to change. So what I mean by that is we need to collaborate more rather than competing, because that's something I see within our culture is that there's a lot of competition and there's not enough collaboration. And how that can happen is, well, if I'm in a space whereby I can help and I can reach out to young people, whereby I can share a thing or two that's gonna help them take a step up, why not? So I'm saying that, well, look, I might be succeeding in what I'm doing, but then how am I helping those that are coming after me? I've got to have in my mind, okay, well, this is a way in which I can give back. Do you see? And it's not just throwing your money, because anyone can do that.
Yeah.
It's actually giving your time, giving your energy, giving your resources, right? So I think, yes, maybe you don't necessarily have something in which you have in mind you can do or give, but there are organizations in which you can partner with that are already doing it, that already have that system in place.
Yeah.
So something that I decided to do when I came out of prison was to give back to the youth, because I realized like, wow, what I've gone through, so many other young people are going to be going through the same very thing, because there are untold amount of young people that have, you know, that are faced with fatherlessness. There are untold amounts of young people that are faced with peer pressure. There are untold amounts of young people that are faced with trying to navigate what it means to be a young person in the West. So the best thing I can do in order to sort of try and bridge the gap and make amends of the wrong that I did was to get into youth work. So I did that for I did that for 5 to 10 years. So I started off with a youth organization, and then I built my own business.
Oh, amazing.
And essentially it started off working in the youth club and speaking with young people that are going through various different life challenges, some of which had gone to prison or had just come out of prison, some of which were selling drugs, and just having these conversations with them and really challenging the way in which they were leading their lives was something that I really enjoyed, because I had the privilege of seeing a lot of these young people turn over a new leaf. Some decided to go to university, some decided to take football seriously, and some of which are professional footballers playing in the Premier League, which is just like mind-blowing, right? And a lot of the young people got to see my transformation and my growth as well, because they heard, yes, I went prison, but then later on they heard that I made it into Cambridge. So they got to see me blossom, but I also got to see them blossom, and I'm still able to see them blossoming in you know, in their own narrative, in their own respect.
That's so great.
And I think that's the beauty of life, you know. A person can be in one place today and a whole nother place tomorrow. So I think it's having that grace and that love for one another, because as we're seeing, like, the world's going cold, you know, and if we don't take responsibility of those we have around us, nothing's going to change.
So as you said, you got into Cambridge University. So what made you like want to go there? You know, what were you studying?
For sure. So whilst I was in the youth club doing youth work, so actually when I came out of prison, I decided to go back into college. So I finished, I was in media studies. So I went back and I finished with flying colours. There was a man that was really, really back in my corner. They didn't want to accept me because of the nature of my case. And they were like, no, we can't let him back in. And his name was Philip Tier. He's a white man. And he was the only one that was defending me. He would write me letters, he would check up on my mum, he would send me books. And the craziest thing about it is when I was in college, I was a nightmare for him. I was a nightmare for him, but just the love he bestowed on me just showed me that, you know what, there's still humanity.
Oh, that's so
you know.
amazing.
And it's crazy because when I came out, those that were the head of the faculty were coloured. They were black people. And they were like, nope, we can't let him back in. We can't let him back in. He fought night and day to ensure that I'd get back in. And I got back in and I smashed it. Because I was like, I can't let myself down. I can't let him down, and I for sure can't let my mum down. So yeah, I finished with flying colours and I was essentially eligible for uni. But then I decided to go the way of giving back, which was the youth work. So I decided to get into youth work. I decided to study youth work. So I went in a completely different direction.
Oh, right, okay.
I've always been a creative. I think that's something that comes naturally to me. And I decided, sure, well, look, I feel like there's purpose here. It's not just about me, it's about them. And if I can just look outward, I think I can make the world a better place. And that's the challenge I gave myself. And I was like, even if I can just speak to one young person, that would be amazing. So it didn't actually start there. So when I finished college, Philip helped me get into a law firm. And I was in this law firm for about, say, 6 to 12 months doing an internship. And essentially what I was doing was I was going to different schools and promoting the law firm schemes. And at the time I had a gold tooth. And I was just like, I felt like I was being judged every single day, simply because of the way I'd speak. Obviously I was dressed professionally, but even that I wasn't doing it properly. Like my top button wasn't done, but I'd still be wearing a tie. And it just goes to show like the rough and the clean merging together. And I felt like that was a pinnacle part of my life because it was breaking a mold of the old. So I decided to take out my gold tooth. This gold tooth that I'd had in my mouth for 7 years. I decided, now, life's gonna go a different direction. I'm gonna take out this gold tooth and I'm just gonna turn over a new leaf and start fresh. And it was a symbolic act. And Simply because I felt judged, but simply because I felt like I wanted to do something outwardly that was going to propel me towards the right direction. And I just felt like it was something that I could do that would make it manifest, basically. So yeah, I was working in this law firm, and I'd go to different schools, and essentially I'd take the young people to see these different law firms. So young black kids that were aspiring to be lawyers one day, as young as anywhere between 9 to 13. And they'd just be so inspired. And I was just like, wow, like, this is amazing. Like, I get to do this. This is amazing. And I was getting paid peanuts for it, but I loved it. I loved it. And I remember around that time, I wanted to take my walk with God seriously, because the truth is, when I came out of prison, I wasn't altogether on the straight and narrow. It took a while for me to get to the place where I said, I made a vow that I'll never go back to prison again. So why am I selling drugs again? I better quit that, and I better get on the right path. It's not going to be easy, but it's going to be worth it. And I remember friends of mine saying, like, are you crazy? You're making X amount like a week and you want to just let it up. And I was like, yeah. And I let it up to only earn a couple £100 a month, literally.
But what were you doing with that money before? Like, were you investing it, or you just spending it on like
No,
trainers and like stuff?
I was blowing it. I was
Right.
blowing it. I mean, just the mindset wasn't there, right? I didn't have
Like that, the sort of
Yeah.
financial education.
financial education, that depth, that longevity mindset. Everything was now. Like, I'm getting it so quickly, so no worries, I'll get it again next
Right.
week. So
Okay.
yeah. And the money I was earning was what these law firm people would be earning.
Like
So it's
lawyers. Wow.
like, yeah,
That's mental.
yeah.
So then, yeah, from there to Cambridge, like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So essentially what happened was, I'll tell you the bridge between. So once I left the law firm, I decided to go to church and took my faith seriously. And I met a man at my church who I just felt like I needed to speak to. And I cut the long story short. He was basically the guy that was going to open the door for me to just basically live out this purpose of being able to give back. So he was the founder of this youth organization.
Okay.
And basically that element of what I would be doing in the law firm, I loved. But the admin side, I hated. So I was now able to do my 70% more prominently, whereas the 30% was literally the 30%. Whereas the law firm, my 30% was the 70%,
Right,
and my
okay.
70% was the 30%. So I wouldn't take these children to see these different law firms as often as I would have liked to, because that's the bit I enjoyed. So working in the youth club, I was able to essentially speak to these young people on a day-to-day. Now, it's within me going into youth work and really wanted to study it. I passed that course with flying colours. And then I was like, okay, cool, what's the next thing then? I'm not just going to be here working and not like progressing, because yeah, there's more to this, right? So I decided that I was going to go uni, and I said, look, I can apply for the local universities, or I can apply for the universities that are up and out there. And the director of the company, or the youth organization, challenged me and said that I should dream big, and I shouldn't just put my eggs in these small baskets, but I should actually go for it. Like, so he encouraged me to apply for Cambridge, which I did, Cambridge, Oxford, and a few others. And yeah, I got the first interview. And do you know what's so mad, yeah? I remember I had a conversation with my grandma. I went to see her before I got into Cambridge. And then she was like, so she lives in New York.
Oh, okay.
And I remember her saying, she said, you're gonna meet your wife in uni. And by this time I was like, heading towards my late 20s. And I was like, cool. It just stuck with me. I just, like, everyone sees their grandparents in this angelic form, right? And that was me. Like, my grandma was just like my world, right? And she's like, yeah, you're gonna meet your wife in uni. And she's a devout Christian. And I was like, okay, cool, interesting. I'll bear that in mind. And I hadn't seen her in years. I went to surprise her. I hadn't seen her in years. So anyway, I get to the interview, the first interview at Cambridge, and all goes well. I get invited to another interview. So I was like, whoa, like this is like happening, right? And then I get invited to the second interview, and then they say, yeah, they're gonna get back to me. But then I asked them, because of what my grandma said, are there any other colored people here? And they were like, yeah, there's one lady. And then he mentions the name. And I get a letter through the post saying I make it into Cambridge University. And it was such a delightful moment because I felt like this was the turning point in making my mum proud. Yeah, because that statement she made of, I didn't ever think I'd have to come to a place like this to visit you, it stayed with me. And it's like, even when I was veering off the wrong direction, I had to quickly remind myself, like, no, this isn't what I said I was going to do. Because I made a promise to myself that I'd never find myself in a place like prison ever again. I remember the last day of my sentence, I was just saying in my cell, Leslie Abrokwaa was successful. Leslie Abrokwaa was going to be successful. I was just walking around in a cell saying all of this stuff. And it's crazy because one of the prison governors said to me, like, oh, you're leaving, are ya? Should we save a spare room for ya? And I swore at him. But the thing is this, like, for those that don't affirm themselves in that way, where they make a vow to themselves that they'll never find themselves in a place like prison again, it's like, words are powerful. And it's like, how many people did that governor say that to, that reoffended and reoffended and because
like believed what he said?
Literally, well, even if they didn't believe it, some way, somehow, that word holds power. And I'd already made a vow in the cell before I left that I'm never going to find myself in a place. And I didn't. By God's grace, I didn't. But I say that to basically say, like, what we speak over ourselves is so pinnacle to where we end up in life. What we think about is so pinnacle to where we end up in life. And I think it was something that God allowed to happen because me getting closer to God and me getting stronger in my faith all shaped me to think in that way, you know. But I think the adverse effects it had on my mum, seeing how much weight she lost and seeing how much it took a toll on her, was a strong enough reason for me to say, nah, I got to fix up when I get out. I got to just do what's right. And it's going to be hard. It's going to mean that I may not look cool in the eyes of those that are around me, but so what? It's going to be worth it in the end. So, yeah.
And so you then, from her saying that in that place, you know, it's almost like she potentially could have said that when you were at Cambridge as well.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? Like, maybe she would have never seen you there either.
100%. And it's like, I draw on that memory because I remember when I received the letter and I opened it and they made me the offer of acceptance, I was just like, wow, like I can show this to my mum. I can tell her I made it into Cambridge University. And I did. And she was ecstatic, you know. She was like, well done. Like, it's the beginning of great things. And yeah, it was special.
That's so special. Incredible. Yeah. And what did you study and how was your time at Cambridge?
Time at Cambridge was challenging, but it's part of the journey. So I studied youth and theology.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wanted to learn more about young people and essentially dive deeper in my faith as well and just bring the two together. So that was essentially the subjects in which I read. My time at Cambridge was challenging because I was the only black person in my college.
Wow.
Yeah, I was the only black person in my college. There were a couple that came in and out, but at the time in which I was studying, I was the only black person. Yeah.
And what challenges did that present?
Are you lost? Can I help you? And they were visitors. So somebody that came to visit their family member was asking me if I was lost when I was studying there. So yeah, sometimes people be driving and they'll just suited and booted. I'm driving in a car and just put up their middle finger and swear at me.
Oh my God.
Crazy. So those are some of the challenges. There are a lot of things in which I had to bring forth. I remember being in a lecture one time and the nature of what was being taught was racist, just to put it plainly. It was sheer racist. In the sense of I don't think there was an awareness of how the information that was being brought forth was being presented. There wasn't an awareness of it, that there was one black person in the class. So I raised the complaint, and yeah, it was seen to, but nothing really happened.
So are you, I know you said like, you're really happy with obviously your story. It is your story. There's nothing you can change anyway. But would you encourage others to do the same, like to apply to Cambridge and go to Cambridge?
Oh yeah, go for it. Why not? If that's what you aspire for, right? I think for me, it was just, it's a part of my journey. I don't hold it as a trophy because it's just a part of my journey. And I just feel like what it did and what it's capable of doing is to just show that young black man that, look, you don't have to go that way. There's another way you could go as well. There are so many successful black people that aren't in a trap, that aren't necessarily rappers or athletes or whatever it might be. There are book smart young black guys that are killing it in the industry. So you can go that way too. That's also an option. It's not just the rapper, the athlete, or whatever else there might be. There are other avenues as well. And that's essentially what I feel is more important. More than me making it into Cambridge, it's that actually this sheds light to say, like, you can go another way. There's another avenue for you too.
Wow. Yeah. And so now, obviously we're in Ghana right now. Yeah. You moved here. Why?
Good question. You can ask my wife. No, I'm playing. So it was actually my wife's idea, and she's not Ghanaian, as you know. So my grandma was right. She said, I'm going to meet my wife in uni. I did. I met a fine Asian woman by the name of Krupa, and we got married within the space of 5 months.
Wow.
I engaged her, no, within 6 months. I engaged her on the 5th month, and I married her the following month. And we've been married for 6 years now. And it was her crazy idea to move to Ghana. We've been here for 3 years, but traveling to other countries, etc. And when she mentioned it, I was like, I just ignored it. I was just like, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know. And then she just kept on bringing it up and bringing it up. And then I decided, you know what? Maybe this is the next thing for us. Maybe this would be a good adventure, actually. So I prayed about it, as you do. And I had 3 dreams, 3 vivid dreams that we must go to Ghana. Don't know why, but I had 3 vivid dreams, and I just felt a strong peace about moving to Ghana. And I just felt like there was purpose here to fulfill. And I mean, we're still on our journey, but I think being a man of faith is trusting God, and essentially, they say faith is blind, right? Even if I don't know what's ahead of me, I know that He has got me. So putting my trust and faith in Him, in that higher being, that higher power, the Almighty, I know that all is well. And essentially being in Ghana, I was able to do some youth work here as well. I was called to one of the most prestigious schools here in Ghana to share not only my story, but to empower the young people. And to this day, it's been like 3 years, to this day I get young people. It's an international school, private school. I get young people coming with their parents to say, you're that guy that came to speak at our school.
Wow,
and off the back of that, I've been able to meet diplomats and all these different types of people, whereas maybe in London, it might not have been the case. But yeah, I think there's a lot of purpose here, and I'm glad we were brave enough to make the move, because it's meant that I could grow in a way that I wouldn't have been able to envision growing if I was in the UK in my comfort zone.
And what are you doing now? Like, for people that want to, find you, you're doing music.
I am indeed. Yeah, so doing music. I'm just using my gift of being able to put words together to shed light on faith and just shed light on the fact that there's an afterlife, and there are more people that have passed away, or there are more people that are dead, deceased, than there are people that are alive right now. So there's one thing that's guaranteed, is that we all have an eternity in which we're going to face. And the choice is ours to cement our eternity in the right place. And my music just sheds light on the fact that they're loved by God, and they have a choice to make before they meet him. So yeah, my music is empowering. Yeah, it's reflective, it's introspective, and it suits my nature, and it just suits who I am in regards to, I'm just laid back, I'm cool, I'm easygoing, and my music is in the same light.
Nice. And it sounds really good, as well as having, great purpose. Like, it sounds great as well.
Appreciate it.
And then work-wise as well now, what are you up to?
So in regards to work, so coming to Ghana, I didn't really know what I was going to be doing. So the business in which I had was called Passion for Purpose. So I was going into schools in the UK, had the privilege of going to the likes of Eton College to give talks and do workshops to their students. And I wanted to do the same thing here in Ghana. So I was targeting international private schools, but that kind of dwindled away because the same value in which the UK or the West have for that kind of work isn't the same here. They just kind of want you to do it for free. But at the time when I first started it here in Ghana, had a baby on the way. So it's like, hey, free ain't gonna pay the hospital bill because there's no NHS here. So cut the long story short, I kind of parked that one side, get called here and there, but I kind of parked that one side. And then I decided to get into something called high ticket sales. And that's essentially working with a brand, a company, or even an influencer that has a product or a service, and essentially presenting that product or service to a consumer or a client and helping them cross over, make a purchase, and you take commissions out of that. So it started with me doing that, and I was seeing more money than I was seeing in the UK. So it was like really fun, really exciting. Like, I get a thrill from hopping on these calls with these people. And then we decided to create our own company. So yeah, that's essentially what it's been. So now we have our own offer, and we have businesses in which we're partnered with, that we are essentially able to place people on as closers and appointment setters, where whatever they close, we get a commission, and then we give them a commission as well. So that's essentially what we've been doing. It's fun, it's exciting, it's great having your own business, but it's also great connecting with other people and collaborating and building from the ground up.
Amazing. So what's that company called, in case anyone wants to, support you?
For sure. So it's called The Closing Project.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the description below so
For sure.
you can find out all the information.
Brilliant.
Well, thanks so much, Leslie, for sharing your story. It's honestly so inspiring.
Thank you.
I don't think many people go from, what you went through all the way to where you are now. Like, you're so successful on the straight and narrow. Like you're not what you were doing before. Like, and you've got a family, and you're living your dream here. So it's so amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for giving me the space to share my story, and I guess for people to hear.
Amazing. Thanks.